All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Alejandro Martinez. I'm a special education advocate and trainer with Brighton Center, and I'm happy this morning to be introducing with me Katya Finta with Any Baby Can. Brighton Center and Any Baby Can go back a long way. We've been partnering together to provide resources for the community. And Katya is going to talk a little bit about distance learning and a little bit mostly about how to help parents set up their virtual classroom at home, talk about certain strategies for distance learning, because as we know, it's not the perfect solution, or it's not the perfect way that our kiddos learn. So she'll be talking about some great strategies and ideas for you guys to take home and implement if you're having issues. And then primarily what I'll be talking about is what our families can do if they're struggling with distance learning and their children aren't making progress. And that's really the only option they have at the moment is distance learning for whatever reason. I'll talk about what families can do and what steps they can take to ensure that their students are being serviced appropriately. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and get started. And the first things first, distance learning, as we know, isn't for everybody. It is really, especially with our special education population, it's not going to work for a variety of reasons. And primarily it will come down to your child's disability and whether or not their needs are being met through distance learning. With distance learning, a lot of times the IEP doesn't really translate that well into instruction. So there are things in the IEP like accommodations or modifications that really can't be implemented 100% faithfully through the IEP or through distance learning, just because of the nature of distance learning. And that's really where the big disconnect and issues come from that I've been seeing in ARDS through the pandemic, and I've been hearing about from families. Now, the first thing that parents need to understand is that it really is a hands-on approach. And I know parents don't want to hear that because, again, it really is the school's responsibility to educate our children. But at the same time, with distance learning, it's all hands on deck. Parents really need to be involved in the process as much as possible. And it is very stressful, but it's very time consuming and demanding. And parents need to understand that from the get-go, that it is going to be a lot of heavy lifting on their part. Now, I understand that some of our kiddos might have some health issues, or you might be living in a situation where you have someone at home who is in that category that might be susceptible to getting sick. And so, your child then is going to be learning from home exclusively. In those situations, really what I would recommend, and I would recommend this across the board for any family that's struggling with distance learning, but is to call for an ARD meeting. And as you may not know, you can call for an ARD at any time. There is nothing in law that prohibits you from calling an ARD. Legally, you have to have one annual ARD per year, but that doesn't mean that you can't call for an ARD. So as a parent, you have the option to call for an emergency ARD or review ARD to talk about your child's programming. Now, like I mentioned before, if you're having issues with the school in terms of instruction, or you feel like your child isn't making progress or distance learning is not working, that doesn't absolve the school from figuring out a solution. Being the loudest voice of the ARD committee as the parent, you have the power to call for the ARD and talk about what options are available for your children to succeed in the distance learning environment. It's not just a one size fits all, and that's kind of the beauty of distance learning right now, is that schools are calling meetings and they're asking parents to sign or agree to what's called a contingency plan, or it's basically a condensed version of the IEP that goes over specific things that the school is going to agree to implement as faithfully as they can, full understanding that some things are just not going to be able or possible through distance learning. Now, in that same vein, parents can also add to that, and they can bring things to the table. So let's say your child does better in a one-on-one environment or does better with one-on-one instruction. Well, the beauty of online learning is that there's synchronous and asynchronous methods. Synchronous being that a child is logged in, receiving information in real time, and they're learning in real time. And asynchronous would be, they would log in at a later time, they would look at a video, do some assignments, and then that's how they would receive credit for their work. In that same idea, you can ask that in that ARD meeting, if your child does better in a one-on-one situation, you could ask for perhaps a pull-out session where, if they're receiving instruction through Zoom, you can the school can create a pull-out room where it's just one teacher working one-on-one with your student. Now, this is a difficult accommodation to get onto the IEP because your child more likely than not must have had it written in their IEP somewhere that they were receiving instructional minutes through the IEP, either through pullout or they were pushing into the classroom. But again, with distance learning, it's all hands on deck. Everyone has to think outside the box, and it really is about asking and not being afraid to see what other options are available. Because again, distance learning is not a one-size-fits-all approach. It really is trial and error, and you have to see what can be translated from the IEP that can work for your child. Because I understand that a lot of families, and as I've mentioned before, it's not going to be 100% possible for your child to attend school this year at all in person. So, distance learning is going to be the method for the long haul. We have to think about ideas outside the box that can work and not necessarily be stuck with instruction that's not going to be beneficial. With that being said, one of the most important parts, and this is distance learning or not, is collecting data. So by collecting data, you're going to be able to provide ammunition to support your case when you're in that ARD meeting to say, look, my child is not progressing in these areas. And here, I've taken video of my child during distance learning. I've taken notes. I've drawn a picture. It depends on what you want to do to show the school that your child's not making progress, because there's not really a fixed way to take data. Data is what you want it to be, as long as it does support the fact that your child is or is not making progress. Now, once you have your data and you have data that supports, what you're going to be fighting for in that ARD, the school is more likely than not they're going to work with you. They're going to work with you because you have anecdotal evidence, you have evidence or data in some way that supports your claims. And that's the biggest thing that I want you to take away in terms of calling for that ARD. Don't call an ARD without being prepared and being prepared to bring solutions to the table. Teachers are working extremely hard to accommodate students. Unfortunately, like I said, this method isn't the best through distance. A lot of our children just don't do well. But if you're not putting in the time to think about different scenarios or different things that you can bring to the table, then schools are really going to have a hard time understanding where you're coming from, and they're going to be less willing to meet you halfway. So being prepared and having different ideas or different solutions will ultimately help you move forward in this process. But, a couple of things with that is never be afraid to ask in an ARD meeting of what can or cannot be possible. And also keep in mind that if your child is just not, distance learning is just not working for them and there's not a health concern at home, really consider having your child go back to school. I know it's a difficult scenario to envision because we've been so conditioned now to be at home, and there's so much misinformation surrounding this virus that's going around. So it really is, and as a parent, I completely empathize and I understand where you're coming from. But at the same time, it's also about asking questions in terms of what the school is doing to keep children safe, what measures they're taking, and whether or not that risk, outweighs the cost of you keeping your child at home. Because I know for a lot of people that I've talked to, a lot of families, they've made that decision that, look, it's a small chance that my child might get sick, but staying at home for another 3 months or possibly 6 months is going to be more detrimental to my child's mental health, academic achievement, emotional distress. You start doing a pros and cons list, and ultimately I think the pros will outweigh the cons. So again, just having that honest conversation with your family, with your spouse, to figuring out what will be the best method of learning for your child, but really keep that at the forefront of your mind, that even though there is a pandemic going on, if there's no other health concerns or immediate health concerns in your household, really consider having your child being back in school, because there's really no substitute for in-person learning, and your child's going to get the best out of his special education team in person. I have heard some horror stories, and I've seen some examples of children coming back to school, and then they're actually receiving virtual instruction on campus, which makes no sense to me. So really, the number one thing that I'm really going to drive today is to call for an ARD. Call for an art, be prepared with questions, be prepared with solutions, and really just talk to your team and ask a million questions. Turn into a 3-year-old and ask why, what does that look like? How does this work? Why, can we try this? Can we try that? And I think that you'll find that your special education team is really going to be open to finding solutions along with you. Now, conversely, there's good news, right? Because distance learning does work really well for a lot of people. And a lot of times it's just a matter of maybe tweaking your home environment, right? Because at home, we're conditioned to be, loose. Home is where we let go, we let our hair down, and we have fun. And our children, right? They equate home with relaxing, with playing with their toys, with being kids. But at the same time, if you're having distance learning being the primary method of instruction, you have to set up your environment for success. And then this is where Katya, I'm going to go to you and please share with us some of your great ideas and resources that you have.
Hey everyone, so happy to be here today. I used to be a special education teacher as well. I taught ALE, so alternative learning environment, a self-contained classroom, as well as ECSC, or used to be PPC, preschool special needs. So very excited to be here. One of the great things about your home is, like he was saying, it's fun, it's a great time. But that does make it hard sometimes when we're trying to have our kids do distance learning. They want to go play, there's a lot of distractions. So one of the first things we're going to look at is really our learning environment. Just like we have the bathrooms where you go to the bathroom, your bedrooms where you sleep, the kitchens where you eat. We need to have a certain place where it's learning time. That is where we do our homework. That's where we do our distance learning. But this is going to be a designated spot where we learn. We're not going to use it to color. We're not going to use it to go play games. It's just going to be for learning. Now, I know we sometimes have 3 kids. They could be spots on the ground. It could be taped off. It can be however you decide to make it, but we need to make sure it's labeled. This is our learning environment. So designate a spot in your home that's just for learning. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't need to look like a Pinterest board. It just needs to be functional. If you need visuals, let us know. We can help create a visual for distance learning. We can help create visuals for, all right, first Zoom, then break. But we do need it to be labeled, okay? If it's just a desk with stuff on it or a computer, that's great. They know that's where they do it. But if it's labeled learning time, it can help when you're creating their schedule. It should be free as many distractions as possible. So if you do have a space, either at the table or on the ground, it's taped off with, their computer or their laptop. Try not to have, their action figures on the table or a iPad where they have all their games on it. Try to make sure it's their computer, it has their visuals, maybe their schedule, and a pen and paper, whatever they're using, or their alternative communication device. But other than that, it's free of distractions. Also, you might want to look at where you're looking. If the kid is looking at the computer, in the background of that has the TV in the background, or all of their toy room, they're going to be more focused on that than probably what they're supposed to be looking at the teacher on the distance learning. So you can turn them a certain way. So maybe it's towards the wall, or it's towards just the hallway, something where it's not going to be as distracting. Also, it could include a table, a desk, just some sort of writing space, and some sort of seating. However, I don't want you to think that your kid has to sit the whole time. We can stand, we can move. That's where that communication with the teacher comes into play. We don't make the kids sit for 8 hours a day in the classroom, so you can't expect your kid to sit for 8 hours a day in distance learning. They get up, they move around, they go take a water break. Allow those accommodations in your home as well. We do need to have some sort of visual expectations and rules. All right, first I'm going to sit down, I'm going to log on to my computer, I'm going to use my listening ears, and I'm going to look at the computer when my teacher is talking. Have visual representations of what they're supposed to be expecting. Now, some of the teachers are going to have that on their computer screen, but I do recommend you also having a printout version and ask the teacher, say, hey, I like how you have that on your computer screen. Can I also have a printout version? That way it's multiple time. So even when she changes screens or when they're doing their learning on their own, they still have those expectations on their desk. Also a visual schedule so that they know what they're about to learn throughout the day. Hey, I'm going to have math time on Zoom, and then I have to do my math independent work, and then I can have a break. And then at this time I come back and I'm going to have reading on Zoom, and then I'm going to have, my worksheet in this. But they know what's going to happen throughout the day. It's not this open-ended thing where it can cause a lot of anxiety. Ask the teacher what the schedule is. Ask them to create a schedule for you. If they're struggling, you can ask me, maybe we can help you with that as well. Timers. These are going to be really great, especially when you're doing like snack time or they have lunch and you're telling them, all right, in 30 minutes, we are going to come back. We're going to have Zoom, so you have a 30-minute break. Put a timer on and remind them throughout the time where it's going to, all right, you see it? It's only about halfway done. In 15 minutes, we're going to come back. Know where your kid's at too. Let's say they're in kindergarten and first grade, and time yesterday doesn't mean anything to them. It's like a month ago. So time, 15 minutes doesn't mean a lot. Use your hands. All right, we have this much longer. Or show a visual timer. You see it's ticking down. We're almost done. Remember where your kid is at developmentally. First, then charts. First Zoom, then break. First work, then play. First learning time, then play time. Okay, they have to do their work first in order to then get time to play in for breaks. Talk to your teachers. If they're not able to sit for 30 minutes and you're really struggling, ask them, hey, this is what's going on. We're really struggling, and then we're having meltdowns after the 30 minutes because they're so overwhelmed. All right, well then that teacher might need to cut it down to 15 minutes and then take a break and then hop back on. Just because it's distance learning doesn't mean it can't be individualized. So we need to make sure we're communicating that to the teachers, because once they turn off their Zoom, they don't see how the kid is reacting to after all of that stimulation. So if you don't tell them, they won't know. So make sure you're communicating that. Sensory fidgets, having something that they can hold in their hand while they're doing Zoom. Let them stand up, let them wiggle something, give them something to touch and feel if that's what they're needing. Those can be on the desks, because a sensory fidget it's not a toy that they're often playing with. It's something to help them learn, and it helps calm their body and their senses. So if that's something they need on their desk, you could have a labeled box of fidgets where you've already shown them how to play with them, how to use them while they're learning, but it's not to just sit and play monsters. It's for a reason, and we still have to learn while we're using them. So I mentioned a visual schedule, and this is just something to use throughout their day. It can be individualized for them, right? If you have a child that doesn't need pictures, they're reading, they're comprehending, they might just have a list of Zoom, you're writing on a whiteboard, and they check it off. Others will need a picture of, okay, I have math Zoom, I have independent work, and they're going to need it broken down. I need break time. Other kids might need photographs. So you might want to take a photograph of their teacher teaching math, and then a photograph of their teacher teaching reading, and that would be their schedule. Others might need an object. It's really based on what your child needs, and I would really ask the teacher, what are you using at school so we can implement that at home, especially if they had that teacher last year or they're in the same school, that teacher. You can say, hey, can you talk to Miss So-and-so? She had him last year. She used a certain schedule, but I don't really exactly remember what it looks like, but we would like that to be implemented this year. So talk with them. Also, include opportunities for breaks. As adults, we take breaks throughout our day. We're not sitting at a computer for 8 hours. We get up, we go get a glass of water, we get some coffee, we go to the bathroom whenever you want. Make sure that your kids are getting breaks. They can't sit at a computer for 8 hours. They need to be standing up. They need to be having physical activity. They need to be having free time or creative time where they're expressing how they're feeling, they're moving and grooving. So give them time, even if they might need more time than what the school day is given. I know a lot of teachers right now are doing, go noodles still, which is great. We want our kids to be up and moving, but you might need more of that. So just keep track of where your kid is at and what they need. Make sure also you're doing snack and meal breaks and it's structured. So they are not eating necessarily. If it's snack time and they have a break, don't make them sit at their distance learning time table for snack time. Have them go to the kitchen table. They need to get up and move because that's for learning time. That's not for dinner or lunch or snack, unless they're eating snack with the teacher and the teacher's reading a book. That's different. But that would be in their visual schedule, snack with teacher, so that they know when it's teacher time, they're still at that spot. Also, unstructured time, especially when they're early childhood, pre-K, kindergarten, they need free choice time. They need outside play. When it's recess, go outside, go for a walk, go on, if they can, ride their bike, do something active. So they're not just sitting again. They're kindergarten, they're 4 or 5, 6 years old. They need to be up and moving and getting some jiggles and wiggles out. And so just have some physical exercise throughout the day. Communicate with their teacher. I really want to stress this. That relationship is also very important and very special. So it makes ours so much easier when you do have full communication, when they know what's going on at home, you know what's going on at school, because remember, they can't really help with things if they don't know what's going on. So be very honest with them, factual. Just let them know what's happening. If you need help, ask them. If they don't help you, then that's really where you need to have more conversations, maybe with the principal or with Brighton, of what's going on, because your teachers are going to try to help you as best they can. I know they're so overwhelmed right now, but they do want to help you as much as they can. Let them know their strengths and needs. They're going to let you know strengths and needs academically, maybe what's going on, what they can see distance learning, but they need to know that from you as well. What they're, doing really well with at home, what they're doing really well with distance learning as you're watching them do it, and what they're really struggling with, what they need more help with. Also, you can talk about functional skills. This is a great time to see what they need more functionally. So if, at school they were potty trained and then you're seeing at home, you know what? We're still not generalizing that. That's something that we need to continue to work on, maybe some in-home training as well. Or, you know what? I realized that my kid is really struggling using a fork when they're eating, but I didn't notice that before. So that's maybe something we need to work on as well. That's a functional skill. So those are things that teachers really want to see, to hear, because those are goals that we need to put in the classroom. Because when you're teaching, it's not just academics. We want it to be the full education for the kids, functional skills. So that's just my 2 cents. I hope that helps. I do want to let you know about some resources from Any Day We Can that our case managers can help with. Our case management is for long-term services and supports. So we will be there for you 6 months, a year, as long as you need it. But we really have seen such a huge increase since COVID, and we want to make sure that no kids are falling through the cracks. And so please contact us if you need anything. But our case managers are working with the parents, the kids, to make sure they have all the tools needed. We were actually able to purchase an iPad for one of our students to help him with distance learning for the home. So, if that's something that you need, please contact us. Also, if you need help setting up your distance learning classroom, if you need more supplies, that is something we can help with. We can do, school supplies, we can help with visual aids. So those visuals I was talking about, I would ask the teacher first because we want it to be similar to what they're using at school. But if maybe they don't have something set up, let us know, we will make something for you. And even sensory friendly headphones, so they can focus on assignments, especially if you have multiple kids, all learning at the same time, these would be helpful. We also have stress management class. Parents can be so overwhelmed right now. There's just so much that's on y'all's plate. So we do provide a stress management class that can help you learn what your stress is, how to help with that, how to help you cope, and help it, not bog you down. So we have that with our health and wellness team. And then our case managers also provide monthly follow-ups. So you can contact them as much as you want. Let's say you're doing really well, they'll still check up on you once a month to see if your goals are being met, what else they can help with. So please, if you feel like you need any assistance, if you're struggling with distance learning, if you're struggling just in general, it's hard. It's not easy. So it takes a village. Let us be part of your village.
And Katya, what's a good number or website where our families can reach out to you guys?
Yes, it's anybabycansa.org. So it's www.anybabycansa.org.
Awesome. And just to, kind of follow up on that, as well with Brighton Center, like I mentioned earlier, we've been partnering with Any Baby Can. They're a wonderful organization. And, part of what we do at Brighton is advocacy. And that's, what my program does, special education support services. And we provide services to families who need help in the school to bridge that communication gap, help families secure services for children, and really just fight for your children's needs. If you need help in that regard, please reach out to our program. Our email address is SESprogram, that's SESS program @brightonsa.org. And we would love to talk to you if you're interested in advocacy services. Again, my program is I'm one of 3 advocates that advocates all over San Antonio to again secure services for children, or to again help bridge that communication gap with schools to ensure that the children are being serviced appropriately to their needs. But I just want to thank Katya for sharing with us today all of her wonderful resources and ideas of setting up the workspace. I know that's super important for children to be successful. And one thing that I really liked about your presentation, outside of having everything outlined, was that those accommodations that you listed, they worked both ways. So not only, I think are they fantastic ideas for setting up the home environment, but if it's something that your child's not used to maybe getting at school, but you find that they're successful with at home, you can call that art and ask that those accommodations be placed on the IEP because you're finding success. So if and when your child goes back to school, those services are continued to be being given to your child, or those accommodations are afforded to your child so that they continue to be successful when they return to school. So again, it's a two-way street, and then just something to think about. But
they're crucial members to the ARD committee, the team. So they have to remember, parents, your voice matters, and you know your kid the best. So if things are going at home, communicate that. Tell them, show it, praise it. It's exciting. You know you're the best, and those teachers can learn from you just as much as you can learn from those teachers.
Absolutely. Anything else you'd like to add, Katya, or anything that you'd like to say?
I don't think so. Contact us if you need anything, if you need any visual supports. We offer parent trainings as well for behavior management, as well as visual and supports in the home. So you can really learn how to set up a visual schedule and how to use token boards. So if that interests you, please contact us. You can find it on our website, our contact information. Also, if you need me, my email is kfinta, KFINTA, bcsa.org. So if you need to contact me, feel free to email me.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Katya, for sharing everything with us today. Thank you for everything that you do. And thank you all for joining us this morning. And again, please reach out to either Brighton or any baby can if you're in need of services. So thank you so much.
Thank you all.